So you just got finished learning about the different layers of the Earth. You learned about the different layers based on their chemical composition, which would be the crust, the mantle, and the core. And then you've also learned about the different layers based on their physical composition, which would be the lithosphere, the asthenosphere, the mesosphere, the outer core, and the inner core. So now we're going to work our way up to the surface of the Earth, and we're going to talk about what is happening in the Earth to cause continents on the surface to move. So this idea was brought up actually a long time ago, but it was reintroduced by a man named Alfred Wegener. And Alfred Wegener is a German scientist. More specifically, he was into meteorology, which is studying the weather, and he was really fascinated by Greenland and did a lot of polar research. Anyhow, he advanced the hypothesis of continental drift. Now, the hypothesis of continental drift states that the continents were once formed one single landmass. They then broke up and then over millions of years drifted to their current positions. Now, this supercontinent was known as Pangaea. And as Pangaea slowly began to break apart, it broke into two different land masses, one called Laurasia and the other called Gondwanaland. Now, over the accumulation of many years and the communication of different scientists and their observations and investigations, evidence began to grow in support of this continental drift theory. One piece of evidence that many scientists noticed was that the continents fit together like a puzzle. This observation was actually first presented as far back as the 15th and 16th century when map makers observed that the continents looked like they could fit together. Anyhow, if you look at the picture, they don't exactly fit together perfectly. But don't forget, the Earth is very dynamic and things are happening all the time. Land is being created, destroyed, you have erosion, so nothing's going to fit together perfectly. But if you look at the continental shelf of the continents, you can see they fit together a little better. The continental shelf is actually the edge of the continents, and this is the part that actually extends into the ocean. Another piece of evidence that was discovered by scientists were that fossils of the same plant and animal species are found on continents that are on different sides of our ocean. Many of these species could not have crossed an ocean on their own. And if you notice down here, we have many different species that this photograph is talking about. Here we have a fossil remains of a freshwater reptile called the Mesosaurus. And if you notice, fossils were found in the lower part of South America, and they were also found in the lower part of Africa. Again, we have another fossil of a type of fern called the Glossopteris. And if you notice, this was pretty much found on all these different continents. And what's interesting is because it is a type of fern, ferns are known to grow in more warm, maybe tropical areas. So to find this on Antarctica is definitely would be a surprise if you didn't think that the continents were once together or in different areas. Another thing that scientists noticed was glacial grooves. And these glacial grooves were found on the southern part of many of these different continents. And as you can see with the arrows showing the way that the glaciers had moved. Glacial grooves in these areas are, what does this tell us about what does the glacial grooves tell us about the southern areas of these continents? Okay, it tells us that the southern parts of many of these continents were once very cold, And since they have moved into their current positions, they are now warmer, but they leave the evidence of these grooves that were produced by the glaciers. All right, another piece of evidence that we have is something called seafloor spreading. And seafloor spreading was not a piece of evidence that was around for Alfred Wegener. And unfortunately, many scientists did not believe Alfred Wegener's hypothesis. It did not seem possible that the Earth's crust could move. So between 1925 and 1960, there was a lot of evidence collected to support a process called seafloor spreading. This was possible with the improvement of technology that a lot of people and scientists had become interested in mapping the ocean floor. So scientists soon discovered a vast mountain range, and this mountain range snakes all around the world. If you see these red lines here, all throughout here, these are all mid-ocean ridges, so these mountain ranges. This is the Atlantic Ocean here. Over here is the Pacific Ocean. Okay, and it shows it everywhere. Okay, so these mountain ranges were discovered running down the center of the oceans, the Earth's ocean basins, and we call these mountain ranges mid-ocean ridges. So if you look on this diagram here, down here in the asthenosphere, which you learned that the rock is not completely solid. It's kind of like a plasticky, kind of like Play-Doh kind of material. Anyhow, as this comes up to the surface, it comes up as magma, and as that magma reaches the surface, it cools and solidifies. And then as more magma is coming up, it cools and solidifies, and it keeps pushing the older solidified magma, igneous rock, away. So as you get farther away from the mid-ocean ridge, the rocks get older. So again, seafloor spreading occurs at mid-ocean ridges. Seafloor spreading is the creation of new lithosphere, which is this layer right here, and it forms from the magma rising to the surface and solidifying. Now, okay, sorry, forgot one more thing here. And as tectonic plates spread apart, magma fills the gaps in here. So as new crust forms, old crust is pushed away. So, oops, hold on a second, gotta go back. Gotta love technology. All right, there we go. So, as I was saying, as new crust forms, old crust is pushed away. So, as scientists, as they're finding the age of the rock, they notice that rock over here would be much older than rock over here. All right, now we can move on. Now, there's a piece of evidence on seafloor spreading. Our poles, our North Pole and our South Pole, are magnetic. And every so often, every many thousands of years go by, these poles, the magnetic field of these poles change places. And we call this magnetic reversal. So in the mid-ocean ridges, scientists discovered that much of the grains inside the mid-ocean ridges were actually magnetic minerals. And they found that when the Earth's magnetic field reversed, the magnetic minerals aligned in opposite directions. Okay, so as seafloor spreading is occurring here, you have new rock being made. It gets pushed out, So the farther it gets away from the ridge, the older it is. But then they noticed that there were these bands within these rocks. So as the magnetic field reversed with the North and South Pole, the magnetic minerals would align or change direction. So here you have a strip where the magnetic minerals change direction. And then you have another strip where they change direction. So the scientists noticed this. Okay, so in summary of what we learned with this PowerPoint, you learned that a German scientist named Alfred Wegener advanced the hypothesis of continental drift, which is that there was once one single landmass called Pangaea. It slowly broke apart, and then the continents had drifted to their current positions. Some of the evidence that you need to remember is that the continents fit together like puzzle pieces. There were many fossils of plant and animal species that were found on different continents and different side of the ocean, and many of these species could not have crossed the ocean on their own. So this showed a similarity between the different continents. Third, there were the glacial grooves that were very similar on Antarctica and many of the different continents. And finally, seafloor spreading, which showed that as the plates were moving apart, magma would come up to the surface at mid-ocean ridges, pushing newer rock up and pushing the older rock away. Now, if you missed anything on your partial notes, just go back to fill them in. Go back to reread anything if you need to, and we will be doing some activities in class and moving on to the next section. Thanks.